18 years after Russia and Georgia went to war, the conflict is back in focus at the United Nations. Russia continues to maintain its military presence in Abkhazia and South Ossetia, while Georgia and several Western governments say Moscow is deepening its control over these territories. So is this simply an unresolved conflict from 2008, or is the Caucasus entering a new and potentially dangerous phase? "18 years after Russia and Georgia went to war, the battlefield may be quiet, but the conflict is far from frozen." European members of the Security Council accused Russia of maintaining an illegal military presence in Georgia, militarizing the breakaway regions of Abkhazia and South Ossetia, and taking steps that they say could move those territories closer toward annexation. Moscow rejects the way the West describes the situation. So what exactly is happening in the Caucasus?
Since Russia's aggression and subsequent illegal occupation of Georgia's sovereign territories of Abkhazia and South Ossetia regions. The Russian invasion of Georgia in August 2008 demonstrated the start of Russia's more aggressive stance towards its neighbors.
Our Western colleagues persist in requesting discussions of an issue that has nothing to do with the Security Council's mandate and brings no added value to its work. In August 2008, the residents of Tsinval were attacked by the Georgian military of the Madman Saakashvili regime. An armed assault against South Ossetia cynically violated an international agreements on the peaceful settlement of the conflict between Georgia and South Ossetia. The sleeping city of Tsinval came under massive artillery fire, after which units of the Georgian Army's ground forces and special forces of the Georgian Interior Ministry entered the city. At the same time, an attack was launched against the positions of the Russian peacekeepers. These criminal acts resulted in numerous casualties among the residents of South Ossetia and Russian military personnel.
The latest diplomatic confrontation is playing out at the United Nations. A Latvia-led group of Security Council members has accused Russia of continued militarization and deeper integration of Abkhazia and South Ossetia, even raising concerns about possible annexation. But Moscow rejects these characterizations and maintains that both territories are independent states, and that disagreement goes to the very heart of this conflict: sovereignty. On August 20, the UN Security Council held a closed meeting on the Russia-Georgia conflict, marking 18 years since the 2008 war. The following day, Latvia's Deputy Permanent Representative delivered a joint statement on behalf of Latvia, Denmark, France, Greece, and the United Kingdom, as well as incoming Security Council members Austria and Portugal. The group reaffirmed Georgia's territorial integrity within its internationally recognized borders. But the most important part of the statement was its warning that Russia was taking steps towards the possible annexation of the two regions. The statement specifically pointed to a May 9, 2026 agreement between Russia and the de facto authorities of South Ossetia, described as a treaty on deepening allied cooperation. The Western-backed statement also highlighted Russian military presence, infrastructure links, restrictions on movement, and what it described as continued militarization. Russia rejects the Western characterization of Abkhazia and South Ossetia as territories occupied by Russia. Moscow recognizes both entities as independent and has repeatedly rejected the accusation that Russia is simply annexing Georgian territory. To understand today's tensions, we have to go back to August 2008. Fighting erupted around South Ossetia. Georgia launched a military operation against Tskhinvali, and Russia responded with a large-scale military intervention. The war lasted only days, but its consequences transformed the security landscape of the Caucasus. And 18 years later, the territory dispute remains unresolved. Georgia has historically argued that Russia orchestrated the escalation and intervened militarily. Russia has argued that Georgian forces launched a major attack on Tskhinvali and that Russian forces were responding to the situation. The war was short, but strategically its consequences were enormous. Russia emerged with military forces positioned in and around the two breakaway regions. The European Union mediated the 6-point ceasefire agreement, but the central territory dispute remained unresolved. After the war, Russia recognized Abkhazia and South Ossetia as independent. Most of the international community did not. That created a geopolitical grey zone. For Georgia, these are occupied territories. For Moscow, they are independent states. And for the wider international community, their status remains unresolved. Georgia sits in one of the most strategically sensitive parts of the South Caucasus. It connects the Caucasus to Black Sea. It lies next to Turkey, a NATO member, and it sits along major transport and energy corridors connecting the Caspian region with Europe. For Moscow, Georgia is therefore not simply a territorial dispute. It is part of a larger contest over influence in the Caucasus. On May 9, 2026, Russia and the de facto authorities in South Ossetia signed what was described as a treaty on deepening allied cooperation. Western governments and Georgia see this as another step towards deeper integration. The latest UN joint statement went further, describing Russia as taking steps towards annexation. But here is where we need to be precise. A step towards integration is not automatically the same thing as formal annexation. The important question is whether political, military, economic, or infrastructure integration is gradually making the distinction between the de facto territories and Russia less meaningful. The bigger issue today is not simply whether Russia will launch another war against Georgia. The more important question is whether post-2008 status quo is becoming permanent. The May 2026 agreement between Russia and South Ossetia has raised fresh concerns about deeper integration, while Russia's continued military presence keeps the strategic balance firmly tilted. The latest Western statement points to multiple areas of Russian involvement. The argument from Georgia and its Western partners is that the cumulative effect matters more than any single agreement. In other words, the question is not only has Russia formally annexed these territories. Tbilisi continues to insist that Abkhazia and South Ossetia are part of Georgia's internationally recognized territory. Georgia wants Russian forces withdrawn and wants a peaceful resolution of the conflict. The latest UN-backed statement also called for implementation of 2008 ceasefire agreement and for the safe and dignified return of internally displaced people and refugees. Because the dispute is fundamentally tied to international law and recognition, the latest joint statement called for a peace resolution based on international law, the UN Charter, and the Helsinki Final Act. The UN can debate the conflict, it can issue statements, it can support monitoring mechanisms, but changing the military reality on the ground is far more difficult. One side sees the situation as an unfinished occupation, the other rejects that framework and treats Abkhazia and South Ossetia as independent entities. These three concepts, territory recognition and effective control, are at the heart of the dispute. There are several reasons why a new large-scale war is not the most obvious scenario. Georgia has a strong international attention. Russia already has a military presence in the disputed regions. Moscow can exert influence without launching a new conventional invasion. Georgia itself has a strong incentive to avoid a military confrontation. The more likely strategic contest may therefore be political, economic, diplomatic, and military pressure below the threshold of full-scale war. The South Caucasus is undergoing its own strategic transformation. Russia's position in the region intersects with Turkey's growing influence, Azerbaijan's strategic importance, Armenia's evolving foreign policy, and Europe's interest in alternative transport and energy routes. That makes Georgia much more than a small country caught in a dispute with a larger neighbor. It is a strategic corridor. There is no evidence today that a new 2008-style invasion is imminent, but that doesn't mean nothing is changing. The latest UN statement show that the diplomatic dispute remains alive. The May 2026 agreement shows deeper Russian integration with South Ossetia, and the continued Russian military presence means the strategic reality created after 2008 remains firmly in place. So is another Russia-Georgia war imminent? There is no evidence today that a new 2008-style invasion is about to happen. But the strategic competition is clearly continuing through military presence, diplomacy infrastructure, and political influence. The war may have ended 18 years ago, but the geopolitical battle over Georgia and the Caucasus is far from over. Thanks for watching National Defense. Jai Hind, Vande Mataram.